Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of The Challenge We Face with Quacy Smith. I am your host, Kathleen Harris, and we are here with the candidate today. Hello, Quacy.
Hi, Kathleen. How are you?
Well, how about yourself?
I am strong.
Indeed, indeed. So we have decided to present an episode today on comprehensive immigration reform. As many of you know, the border and its security are but one of the topics that are highly discussed on the campaign trail, specifically in our district, Congressional District 9. And so I would like to have a conversation with Quacy today about the different aspects of this complex issue and how he will go about tackling these issues on behalf of our district. So, Quacy, this is a topic that has so many tenets to it, and however you want to begin this discussion, there are a number of subtopics that we could go into, and I don't know if we'll, be able to do a whole lot in this one episode, but certainly we can start the conversation and continue with further episodes as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Again, it's always a pleasure to be with you in these sessions, and of course to all of our viewers that tune in frequently and share this podcast. This conversation about border security and immigration reform is one of the key challenges that we face. I don't think it's as complicated as of a challenge as our political leaders that are in office right now has made it. It's not that complicated of an issue. In fact, everyday Americans, folks like you and I, see the issues and the things that need to be resolved. And there is a meeting of the minds. These issues can be resolved if cooler heads prevail, and again, if personal priorities and political ambitions are moved out of the way. This is not a complicated issue to the sense that, or I should say in the sense that it is presented to us. With that being said, it is one of the challenges that we have faced. I was in a parade out in Wickenburg, I believe it was, and one of the voters yelled, I presume it was a Republican voter, and it was, respectful gentleman, no need to, but he's a Republican, and he yelled that, what are you going, now I'm in the back of a truck now, riding in the parade, and he's, 100 or so feet away. What are you going to do about the border? He yells at me. And I turned to him and said, I'm going to do everything I can to secure that border on the first day that I'm in Congress. And he kind of yells back at, all of these politicians have said that same thing. And my response to him was, I'm not them. I'm not them. Whoever them politicians are, I'm not them. I'm not for sale. Because first of all, I've dealt with the border immigration issue my entire life growing up out in Blythe, California. We're very close to the border. We have had a lot of migrant workers growing up. As a police officer, we had to deal with them. Had a Border Patrol station right there, Border Patrol checkpoint right down Highway 76 or 8, whichever one it is, right down. No, so this was not uncommon for us to deal with border related issues. And you hear this statement that's kicked around in Congress and in the media. We have to address this crisis that's at the border. Well, I want to be clear, and you heard it here first. The crisis is not at the border. The crisis is in Washington, D.C. That's where the crisis is. Hey, the crisis is not at the border. The crisis is in D.C. Because when you address, first of all, when you address these border-related security issues and measures and immigration reform, first of all, we have to make sure that we're operating all from the same set of facts. Okay, and the same set of facts. No one is entitled to their own set of facts. Now, this is gonna sting some, but I'm gonna say this, and with all due respect to Republican supporters and supporters of the former president, I want to be clear about this. The reason why that border is not secure right now is not because of Joe Biden. The reason that border is not secure right now is because of Donald John Trump and his political ambitions. And the facts support that. You had a bipartisan group of legislators come together, devout, respectable Republican lawmakers, Democratic lawmakers, independent lawmakers. One of our senators here in this state, Kirsten Sinema, worked tirelessly to come up with a framework that worked to secure the border and address some, not all, but some of the issues related to immigration reform. And the reason why it did not pass is because of one man that said, the facts don't lie. I don't want that to happen because it's going to give Joe Biden a win, and then I have nothing to run on. These aren't things that I've made up. You go go fact check it for yourself. This is what happened. So the border is not secure today because of former President Trump. Now, I want to be clear about that because we got to operate from the same set of facts. Now, to that end, I don't believe that the president has done a good job at all. When I say the president, I'm talking about Joe Biden. He has not done a good job as it relates to this border. Period. I'm a Democrat, but I'm not for sale. The president has not done a good job. Do I think folks need to be impeached and all of that other stuff? No, that's not what that's for. That's what elections and all of that stuff is for. You deal with it on that. But this is one of the areas where I wish the White House would have done a better job concerning was the issues related to this border, and not everybody get all amped up about it just because we're coming up on an election. The reason why there is a crisis at the border, in my opinion, is because people have hijacked the border messaging, border security, immigration reform for political points. And they forgot about the labor issues down there. Supports for these smaller cities and communities, border communities that deal with that. Our Border Patrol agents who are down there doing the best they can with the minimal resources that they have. The immigration courts that are years backed up because of the lack of immigration judges and conflicts of laws and processes that can't be resolved from the bench as a judge. There is a long trajectory of factors that impact immigration reform and border security. And again, the current administration could have done a better job with it, should have done a better job with it. The reason why it's not secure now is not because of the current administration; it's because of the past administration that did not want it to happen. And if we can just and let me add this while I'm talking about it, that this border issue did not become an issue when Joe Biden became president.
That's right.
The border issue did not become an issue when Donald Trump became president. The border issue did not become an issue when Barack Obama was president, or George W. Bush was president, or Bill Clinton was president, or Dad Bush was president. This has been, and the last real time we saw something really, really substantive concerning immigration reform, I think if my mind serves me right, and don't hold me to this,
correct.
But it's President Reagan.
That's right.
That was the last time we saw something. Now, to put this in perspective, when President Reagan was in office, I was in grade school. You understand what I'm saying? And I'm
Absolutely.
A grown man.
That's right. In kindergarten.
Kindergarten. Yeah, you better believe it. You know what I mean? So let's not act like, you can't point it all at Joe Biden. This has been a snowball effect that has gotten out of control, not because of a crisis at the border, but because of a crisis that's in Washington. And when people hijack an issue, that's what's happened. People on both sides have hijacked an issue for the sake of political points and political prowess at the detriment of the people, at the detriment of folks who actually really need asylum, at the behest of people that really coming over here for the right reasons, trying to do the right things. And I think it's sad. I think we can do better. I think we should do better. And there is a pathway to where these two ideals are not in conflict with each other. When I say these two ideals, I mean border security and immigration reform. Those two things are not at odds with each other. In fact, they are absolutely and inextricably dependent on one another. You can't have immigration reform with an unsecure border. You can't secure the border without having some immigration reform. Because the truth be said, and this is what people don't want, this is the part of it that people don't want to talk about because it gets sticky. But there are some jobs in this country that migrant workers are coming across that border to do that folks like you and I, pardon my casual language, ain't going to do.
Right.
I'm not going to make up no hotel bed. I'm not going to work in no field. I'm not going to. There's a whole lot of things I'm not going to do. There's a whole lot of folks that don't look like you and I that ain't going to do that kind of stuff. And so, how do we address this immigration reform from a responsible posture that says some of what we are degrading and denigrating, the process that we are eviscerating because of our politics, is a process that has to work for us. I was here when HB 1070, is that what it was back in the day when it happened, you know, the border thing with Joe Arpaio and all of that stuff. And I remember the impact that it had on some of the stuff that we rely on, landscaping workers, farmers, fast food chains, and hospitality industry folks and stuff like that. The impact was tough.
It was. I didn't live in Arizona at the time, but I remember hearing about it. And specifically, there was an image that stayed in my mind of a fast food restaurant that could not open because the workers did not show up.
Absolutely. This is out in the 9th District. It wasn't the 9th District then, it was something else.
Sure.
But I remember going into Jack in the Box drive-thru right around the time all of that. And Latino minorities were afraid to come outside, afraid to take their children to school. Children that had been born in this country, raised in this country, but their mother or father who had crossed over and was undocumented at the time, afraid to go to the grocery store, afraid to. And I remember pulling up in the Jack in the Box drive-thru, and there was a sign literally on the drive-thru window, "We're closed. We don't have enough work." And I thought to myself, what have we become?
That's right.
As a nation, everybody here except for the natives we're immigrants.
Right.
You know, black folks didn't start here. You know what I mean? We're all. This is a nation of immigrants, and I think immigration reform and border security, and you cannot have one without the other. They are inextricably tied together. If we're able to deal with this in a responsible manner, we live up to the ideals of one of the creeds of this country, this democratic republic that says "E pluribus unum," out of many, one. I think our politics has forced us to try to forge forward as many instead of us focusing on forging forward as one. And if we can keep that at the heart of the immigration reform conversation and the necessity of border security, I think we can come up with some holistic solutions that are not insulting, that are not denigrating. I don't care if you're a former president, a sitting congressman, or someone that's never even thought about politics. You don't get to insult people who are in actual humanitarian crisis, that are coming literally seeking asylum because something has gone horribly wrong in the country of their birth or their upbringing.
Origin,
Their origin. This stuff is literally happening in countries, some third world countries, some not so third world countries, but this stuff is literally happening. And we don't get to call them rapists. We don't get to call them murderers. We don't get to say they're coming out of jails and mental institutions. In fact, some of those folks are some of the hardest working people you'll ever meet in your life. They want an opportunity to live successful lives and raise their children and families. Now, I caveat that by saying this, that we are a nation of laws. And if we ever cease to be a nation of laws, we cease to be a nation. So let me debunk the lie, because I know this is said a lot. All and they use some of these terms now. I think they think it's insulting, but I'm not insulted by much of anything. You know, the Dems and the liberals, they want open borders. That's the biggest lie that's ever been told.
Absolutely.
Show me. I mean, you know, there may be one or two of them out there. I haven't met them, you know. But as for this Democrat that's in the running for Congress in the 9th Congressional District, that has dealt with that border all of his life, as an officer, as a citizen, all of that stuff. Absolutely not. We don't want no border open. The border must be secured immediately. The president must have the ability to secure that border when it needs to be done, you know, and whatever that framework, whatever that criteria is, you know, with it, but that would be within the executive scope of his authority as the executive, you know, of the nation. The border needs to be secured. There are some areas on that border that can only be secured by some type of barrier, a wall. President Trump wasn't wrong about that, and Democrats have to tell the truth. The President Trump was not wrong about that. He was rude and unnecessary and childish about it. And if he was sitting here, I'd tell him that to his face. Sir, you were childish about it. You were right. You had a good, but your posture concerning it was wrong. It was insulting. It was denigrating to generations of Hispanic Americans that have helped build this country and are doing it to what and building it today to what it is. Sir, you were wrong about your posture concerning it. But the fact that there has to be some wall out there in some areas, Mr. President Trump, you're right. You're right about that. And I'm saying that's Democrat. Now, but you have to show out about it. That's what my mom said. Don't be showing out. You know what I mean?
And raised a lot of money off of it.
Oh, yes. And none of which went to building the wall.
That's correct.
You understand what I mean? The whole thing. And Mexico's going to pay for it. How many years later has it been?
That's right.
And Mexico hadn't paid a dime for it.
And they immediately said they would not.
The president, was it Vicente Fox, was he the president at the time, said, I'm not paying nothing. And to this day, that has not happened. But again, to the former president's point, he's right about that. There needs to be, you know, a wall out there in certain areas.
Well, you're talking about miles and miles of territory, so we can't have officers covering every mile of this border. So that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. The bill that was attempted to be passed a few months ago was going to address that. And folks on both sides agreed to it. He didn't. You have to secure the border. You have to enhance border security, because securing the border is not just putting up walls. It's enhancing border security, okay? Our technology systems down there have to be improved, because you can put up a wall, they can build a tunnel and go underneath it. I mean, the coyotes and, you know, and I don't want to get into all of the legal and enforcement background, you know, stuff related to that, but there are other ways that they're coming into the country besides the areas where there's walls. And we can do a better, let me just say this, and we can do a better job than using the border for photo ops. I get sickened every time I see, so-and-so down visiting the border. You didn't go visit no border. You went down there and took a couple of pictures and got back in your Suburban or back in and went away. And you went down there and took a picture. Particularly
those who are from a state who don't have anything to do with the border.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It is for political posturing. That's what it's for. And it's shameful and it's hurtful to folks, even in our district, that literally have to deal with this on a daily basis. We were in Yuma just a few days ago having conversations, you know, related to, you know, to the border. I spoke with some folks that live right down there on the border. we're going to and find out what the real issues are, and from a federal perspective, what can be done to help those small towns, not just to take a picture, to go down there and really address the needs. So the border has to be secure. Some of it's going to be done with barrier, with wall. We have to increase or enhance, I should say, our border security. That's with infrastructure, our surveillance equipment and whatnot. I think particularly as it relates to the border that's in our district down by Yuma, the Yuma area. This is one cause that I would definitely champion immediately, is that Congress needs to find a way to put another port of entry down there specifically for folks that are working. There are a lot of workers that are coming across the border and going back across the border within the same day, and they're coming to work and go home. They don't want to live in America. You couldn't give them American citizenship if you tried. They're comfortable being citizens of Mexico.
That's right.
But they come here to work, and then they want to go back home. We have to do better with the border. In two of the border areas down, it's taken, literally hours to get across. That affects the economy. It affects business owners and landowners and farmers and different industries over here that migrant workers work in. And so one of the causes that I vow to champion is putting another port down there, a port of entry down there, specifically for folks that are coming back and forth for work purposes. This ain't to go down, to the beach place down there, Rocky Point. No. This is to come across to work and to go back. And I think we can do that. I think another of the things that we can do as far as this immigration reform process too, before we even get to reforming immigration, is let's provide more support for border cities that have to deal with this stuff. And this is something that the federal government can do through the states and in different areas, can support cities like Yuma and other cities that are on that border that deal with the influx and reflux of migrant workers and immigration folks who are immigrating. We need to provide extra support for them. Hospitals in Yuma Regional Medical Center, in the heights of some of it's overrun.
Absolutely.
We need nurses
overrun.
and doctors and stuff down there because there's still a humanitarian side of it. Just because you come over and you're undocumented does not mean that if you're having a medical emergency, we're going to send you away. Oh, well, we're not going to spend taxpayer dollars. Well, we're not that cold-hearted. And I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat or like, come on now. You don't get to have a mouth full of scriptures and a heart full of hate. We don't do that. You take care of people. For those that are Christian and, I'm just, our evangelical. Well, come over here. Let me tell you what the Bible really says. You be careful how you treat strangers amongst you. That's in the Bible, too. While you're talking about all the other, that's in there, too. Treat people right. Again, I say, and I want it on the record, you don't get to have a mouth full of scripture and a heart full of hate. That's hateful. Take care of people. God has blessed this country, whether you're a believer or not. We are the most prosperous nation on planet Earth. The strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak. Say it again.
I think you should say that again.
Ought to bear the infirmities of the weak. You don't get to run around and pound your chest and act like big brother and not be big brother.
Right.
And if America's big brother, then we ought to bear the infirmities of the weak. Notwithstanding, we're nation of laws. You don't get to come in on your own terms. You don't know all of, no. There's a process. However, if you're at one of the doors of our hospitals and you haven't, we don't get to turn you away. We don't get to treat you indifferent. This ain't catch and release. You ain't no fish. We do what's right by people. And because that is the honor of this country. That's who we are. That's who we've been. And that's who we must continue to be. And we must have politicians that believe that. And so support for these border cities. I'm particularly concerned about the one in my district. That's Yuma. You are on my Yuma. Who was that said Georgia's on their mind?
That's right.
Whoever that singer was, Yuma, you're on my mind. You are on my mind.
Is that Ray Charles?
Yeah, was it Ray Charles? Yeah. I ain't Ray Charles, but Yuma, you are on My.
Well, there's no question about it. And that's why I think that this is a topic that is so perfect for you to speak to, because you can speak to it from different angles. The personal
Absolutely.
angle, having been raised in Blythe and knowing what it's like to live on the border with Arizona and seeing sort of the influx of people over time, but also the professional aspects, the law enforcement aspect, the legal aspects. This is something that is brought up constantly on the campaign trail. We were recently at an event in La Paz County, and people walked up to our booth, and the topic that was brought up the most was, what is Quacy going to do about the border? And so, this is not a 5-minute conversation to be had at a booth, but that's why I think this was a great topic to bring
Absolutely.
up today. And as I say, we could break this down and be able to talk about the different aspects of it. I know that a lot of folks in this community talk about DACA. They want to talk about these children, these young
Absolutely.
folks, and how they are going to be treated, and the injustice with which they are treated.
Absolutely.
Because they deserve to be secure in this country, because this is the only country that they've known.
Absolutely.
And so if you could speak to that a little bit, and I
Yeah.
think we should probably bring someone in at some point who can speak directly to this from personal experience.
Absolutely, and I look forward to that, certainly, because it's one thing for somebody that's running for office to talk about it.
That's right.
It's an entirely different situation when you bring people whose lives have been impacted because of this crosshairs that the parties have put them in as it relates to immigration reform. And these are real live people with real live concerns. And woe be to the person that says, well, it's not my problem. You should have came over with something. Something's wrong with your heart. Something wrong with your heart.
We're talking about 3-year-olds and
Yeah, something is
5-year-olds.
wrong with your heart. I don't care whether you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. Yes, I'm saying it. Something is wrong with your heart. If you're that heartless about a 5-year-old kid that has never stepped foot in Mexico in their life, something's wrong with your heart. And these are the issues that we must grapple with as it relates to DACA, particularly. And again, without going into all of the legislative stuff, because it's a mile-long conversation. At the core of it is literally the purpose of providing a pathway to legal status for folks who can fit within the framework of a criteria. A lot of Latino voters that I have, and never mind Latino voters, because it just makes it sound like the conversation just about getting votes,
That's
but
right.
Latino
It affects
citizens
everybody. Yeah.
and all citizens. Everybody agrees, listen, you don't get to come over and break the rules and jump to the front of the line. It doesn't matter whether you're white, black, and especially Latino citizens in our district that came over the quote unquote the right way or the legal way, went through the processes. Absolutely, they have a concern with folks that come over through their own means and outside of the framework of the processes, and they should, because they did it the right way. Many of them waited in lines. They've waited for immigration hearings. They've been over here in the country for some time. They've paid their taxes. They've done everything right. They've stayed out of trouble. They've raised great families. They've been productive members of society. Absolutely, they're going to have heartburn with somebody that jumps over, and thinks they can bypass the rule. And they should. And not just Latino citizens. Everybody should have a problem with that. But there is a pool of people that did not choose to be here, that did not bring themselves here, and they've been here, and this is all they know, is these United States of America. And we could do a better job by them. This pathway to legal status, it's going to involve, first of all, it needs to be a bipartisan issue. It needs to be bipartisan because of this, because no single party should be able to take credit for something that the nation desperately needs as a whole. And we should have that in mind. We're not trying to take it as Democrats. We're not trying to take it as Republicans. Let's do this for the country. The bipartisan legislation that involves a process that includes background checks. Obviously, you better have background checks. You're right. We don't want folks that are troublemakers somewhere else coming over here and becoming troublemakers over here. We want to check what you've done since you've been here. If you've been a troublemaker, can't follow the laws, we're a nation of laws. Wherever you came from, we're going to send you back. That's not harsh. That's responsible. That's what that is. Let's get back. That's responsible. That's responsible. And we don't play games. Let me say this while it's on my mind. We don't play games. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene's conduct at the State of Union address is deplorable. Please, people in Georgia, send that woman home. She doesn't need to be anywhere near Washington, D.C., period. If there's a band that's needed in the nation, it's Marjorie Taylor Greene out of Congress. And she can take Paul Gosar with her while they're at it. This is beneath the pale. You don't square off with the President of the United States while he's entering the chamber. You don't treat people like that come into the people's house. Hijack this girl's death and her family. Say her name. Well, wait a minute. This has been a problem since Reagan. Did you tell Donald Trump to say her name? What about George W. Bush or his dad? What about Barack Obama? It's been a problem for everybody. Let's stop playing games and do the right thing. And how dare you stand in the people's house and point out the president that the people elected lawfully, didn't steal anything. The man won. Demand that he calls out this young lady's name who has been tragically lost.
Right.
And you had an opportunity to pass a bipartisan bill that would have honored her life in a way, and you chose not to because of your friends in Mar-a-Lago. If we're going to talk, let's talk, because that's the only way we're going to get to some resolve in this country. And the people are sick of it. Republicans are sick of it. Democrats, independents are sick of it. Folks in CD9 are sick of it. Quacy Smith is sick of it. Let's do the right thing. Let's honor the young lady's life. It's a tragic incident. She's not the only one, though. There's been several people that are, and again, we could go on and on and on, but that's not bypassed. There's more folks that have been killed by folks that are U.S. citizens than they are by immigrants. So let's not gaslight. Okay,
it's sensationalized for sure,
absolutely.
And it's tragic, but it's used as an opportunity.
Absolutely,
and it's just unfortunate.
It's horrible. So these folks that want to come over, let's do some responsible background checks. You got to pay your fair share. If you've been over here for some time as an adult and you had some, all of these situations are going to be different. You came over and you're undocumented, you've been here for some time. Whatever the assessment is, or, your quote unquote debt to society for being here is, you can't do that all in a vacuum. There's going to have to be some framework put in place. But that framework is going to have to result in a meaningful opportunity for you to become a responsible citizen of the country. Everybody coming, should they be taken? Absolutely not. There's some bad weeds in every bunch. There's some bad weeds in every bunch. But do we sweep everybody and put them all in the same bucket? Absolutely not. And to do this, again, we're going to have to, increase some things, consider some things. I get it. It's going to impact, our Medicare and Medicare, and services and different things like that. We can do it. We can handle it as a nation. And we make sure these folks are contributing responsibly. And many of them are already. These babies that are here that didn't bring themselves here, they're on a different track. Many of them born here or brought here. That, you know what I mean? I think we could be a little more reasonable with them and not create a permanent underclass because we need something to run for office on. I think we need to do better.
Sure. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave it there.
You always get me going, and then you turn me off. Don't be about.
Well, because again, there's so many subsets of this conversation that I think we need to revisit, because there's certain paths to legal immigration that we can talk about. We have, white collar professionals who come.
Absolutely.
I can think of many personal friends who have been waiting for years and who pay taxes and who have children who are Americans
Absolutely.
here. And so there's a lot of different ways that we can address this, and we will. And I think we should bring some live examples into the studio of folks who can tell their stories. So thank you, Quacy, for
Thank
this
you.
conversation. And thank you, everyone, for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time on The Challenge We Face with Quacy Smith.